Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the second in our Polar Inspiration series with Polar Routes. Thank you so much for joining us. Particularly, it's always interesting talking about expedition cruising to the polar regions on one of the hottest days of the year. It's not for the first time that we've had this situation, so thank you very much for joining us. We have a really interesting evening coming up with Alastair Newton, who I'll introduce shortly. Also, I'm just going to share my screen now, and then we'll just let you know what is going to be happening this evening. Great. So hopefully everyone can now see my presentation. So yes, so as I said, so a very warm welcome to everybody. I'll introduce you to Alastair shortly. Today, just a quick introduction from me. So just a few minutes just to let anyone who's new to Polar Routes know who we are, but that's as much as it's going to be from me before we get into an interview with Alastair Newton. We are, after that, it's going to be the bulk of the bulk of today's session, and then after Alastair, we're going to have a quick presentation about Ponant expeditions from Vlad, and that will be followed at the end by questions, answers, and a prize as well. And speaking of prizes, someone who is watching this webinar today will have the choice today of one of two items. The one on the left is a sterling silver penguin necklace, courtesy of Promise Designs, or you can have the choice of some Shackleton's whiskey, which is very nice if you like that as well. So if you would like to win one of these prizes, you will need to still be with us at the end. We'll do the prize draw at the end, and one of you will win that prize, one of those prizes. I would just like to thank today Ponant Expeditions. They are hosting it. They are sort of sponsoring tonight's event. Without them, today would not be possible. So a thank you to Ponant Expeditions, and we'll be hearing, as I said, from Vlad a little bit later on, just to with a little bit more information about what they have to offer. But thank you very much. Without the sponsors, these sessions simply would not be possible. So thank you to Ponant today. Just a very quick one. I know many of you already know who we are, but just in case there's anyone new to us today, we are Polar Routes. We are the Polar Expedition Cruise Specialists. We're a wholesaler of expedition cruises to the polar regions. We don't have any of our own ships, but we work with over 22 leading expedition operators. We like to think if we don't work with them, then they're probably not worth knowing. And we are a one-stop shop, so we can compare all of the expedition operators in one place to find your perfect cruise. We offer expert advice on the polar regions and detailed knowledge of the ships. This comes from a team of absolutely passionate enthusiasts. We are all first-hand travel to the polar regions, so really know our stuff. There's very few questions that we can't answer. And as I said, we can compare all of the amazing features, all of the amazing ships, and all of the different itineraries for you to find you the perfect cruise. This is just some of the operators, some of the 22 operators that we work with. We work with some of the big guys, and we work with some of the small ones as well. But tonight, obviously, is all about Ponant Expeditions. All the prices that we offer are the same or better than cruise operators direct. That is absolutely guaranteed. You'll also quite often find, as well as in addition to any operator offer, you'll sometimes see some Polar Routes exclusive deals as well. So you'll never lose out by booking through us. And we'll package the cruise with all the flights to all the weird and wonderful airports you need to get to in the polar regions, the transfers, and we can even do exciting land packages as well. And as you would expect in this day and age, everything is 100% financially protected. We're members of Atoll for that. So if you have any questions for either Alastair as we go through the interview, or myself or Vlad regarding Ponant Expeditions, then please pop them into the Q&A box, which should be at the bottom of your screen. Pop them in as soon as you think about them, and they'll sort of accumulate over the course of this evening, and then we will, as I said, about hopefully 10-15 minutes at the end, we'll go through as many as we can get through, and those questions can be put to either Alastair either Vlad from Ponant or myself if it's a more general expedition cruise question. So as soon as you think of them, pop them in that Q&A box at the bottom and we'll get to them at the end, or as many as we can at the end. So I'd like to introduce our guest for this evening. Alastair Newton is an expedition leader, naturalist, and director of Ponant's expeditions collaboration with National Geographic. He started his work in Alaska's Denali National Park as a wilderness guide before moving on to expedition ships as a wildlife expert and then the role of an expedition leader. He's led over 70 expedition cruises to Alaska before leading expeditions all over the world to nearly 100 countries and counting. His first trip to Antarctica was with the British Antarctic Survey on the RRS James Clark Ross as a science assistant, but he's since returned many times on expedition ships, and we'll be finding out a little bit later that he even met his wife in Antarctica as well, so we'll find out about that shortly. Alastair's a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society and since 2019 has been heading up Ponant's expedition collaboration with National Geographic. I'm sure you'll agree this is quite the expedition cruise CV, and I'm really delighted to have him join us here this evening so that we can all learn more about his extraordinary career, give his insight into expedition cruising, as well as hopefully we'll get some great top tips from him as well. Alastair, good evening.
Good evening, Martin. Good evening, everyone else. Thank you very much for having me here with you this evening.
Quite the CV. It's a long intro, but it's all important stuff.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I find it quite extraordinary to look back on and forget how unusual it is to me. It's just my life and the things I've been lucky enough to do. But as you say, when I reflect back on it, I've had the opportunity to go an extraordinary number of places and more than once, which is very rare.
Fantastic. Well, let's start off by going back to where it all started, and I believe it all started in Alaska. But how did you get started in the world of expedition cruising?
So yes, you're right. I started in Alaska. So I ended up doing my degree in Alaska. My degree was focused on wildlife and particularly the wildlife of Alaska, and lived and worked at a research station in Alaska. And it was one of my students, actually, that I was helping teach. He encouraged me to apply for a job with one of the Alaska Native corporations, the Doyon Corporation. And they ran a wilderness lodge called the Kantishna Roadhouse, which is 90 miles inside Denali National Park. And so that's really where I got started. And then from there, thought this is quite a lot of fun, quite interesting thing to do. Wanted to see a little bit more of Alaska, and so started working on the coast on some of the small ships, the small coastal vessels, going to look for whales and bears and things like that along the coastal areas.
Brilliant. And for those that don't know, the Denali National Park, I mean, that is a stunning part of Alaska, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And the thing that's hard to explain to people about Alaska is the size of it. So Denali National Park is just a little bit larger than Wales. To give you a sense of scale, and has one road inside of it, and that road is 90 miles long, goes right back into Kantishna, an old mining district, and that's where these wilderness lodges, there's 4 of them, located back in there. And of course, the main feature of the park is the mountain itself, Denali. It's the tallest mountain in North America at over 20,000 feet. And the breathtaking thing about it is the north face of it is 18,000 feet high. It's actually the largest face of any mountain in the world. So yeah, just an incredible wildlife, incredible scenery all the way through.
Brilliant, fantastic. And so you ended up on the ships then from your post with a little known company called Cruise West, who I believe don't even exist anymore. But yeah, just talk us through how you ended up on the ships and what happened with that.
Yeah, so absolutely. So as I say, I ended up being head guide of this wilderness lodge, and just enjoyed the opportunity to take people out and show them the sort of natural world, and we used to do walks through that. So I really wanted to see more of Alaska. I'd seen central and northern Alaska at this point. And so a friend of mine said, you know, there's all these ships on the south coast and down in southeast, so that'd be a good opportunity. So as you say, I got on Google and discovered Cruise West. And the thing about Cruise West, it was founded by an Alaskan bush pilot, and his wife was Miss Alaska as well. So kind of a pretty iconic story. And they actually started the sort of expedition cruising in Alaska about 50, 60 years ago now. Wow. But as you say, sadly, one of those family companies that is no more. But I was very lucky to get my start with them, and cruising in and out all the scenic passages that Alaska has to offer, and incredible wildlife, the whales, the bears, even saw wolves a couple of times from our ships, which is incredibly rare. So yeah, fantastic. That's brilliant.
And that's pretty unique, I think, probably to the Alaska region, to see that sort of stuff, to see bears and wolves and in an expedition cruise setting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really is. I mean, you also get, of course, fantastic wildlife up in the Arctic, Canadian Arctic, and up in Svalbard as well. I think for me, Alaska has a really interesting blend of wildlife, incredible scenery, and also cultures, quite diverse cultures all around the coastal regions of Alaska. So, and of course, dear to my heart because I lived there for about 6 years.
Brilliant. And so how did you you went on as a wilderness guide, and then you progressed into an expedition leader, which is quite a lot more responsibility, I think, from my understanding. So how did that, was that something you wanted to do, or did it come about, and what was that transition like?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's not something I really knew much about, actually, if I'm honest, when I started. As you say, I started being there as the wildlife expert. And on these original vessels I started, it was a team of 2 people. Wow. So very, very small. So very quickly you learn. And then this particular company had a fleet of coastal vessels, and then it had one ocean-going vessel. And so they asked if I would move over to the ocean-going vessel, and that was a team of 6, and that had an expedition leader on board. And quite often in the industry, it can be quite transient, particularly on those small vessels. People have real jobs and do this kind of in the summer holidays. But as somebody who is looking to continue doing this year round, they saw an opportunity to put me more into that leadership role, and took a chance with me, and actually set me off to an area I'd never been before, down in the South Pacific. But they said, yeah, you'll be fine. And I had a great team and a great captain as well. So no, it was a great opportunity. And as you say, very, very different role, as I quickly discovered.
So I think from a guide's perspective, you've got quite a set job, haven't you? I mean, especially like as a wildlife expert or a penguin. But as the expedition leader, and we'll come on to this a little bit later on, you're really responsible for the whole gig, aren't you? For the whole cruise, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about being an expedition leader, it is, on the one hand, you're excited about the wildlife and all of that opportunity, but there is also the logistics and the bigger picture. What's happening with the voyage? What's happening with the voyage in 5 days' time? What the weather's going to be doing? And so it's always keeping a finger on every pulse. And it can also be things like knowing what's going on in the hotel, and what's for dinner that night, and making sure everyone's back on time and having a chance to have a shower and enjoy their special night in the restaurant, if that happens to be the occasion that evening.
Brilliant. And you were just launched straight in. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. So this ocean vessel then at Cruise West, I believe that then took you a bit further afield, didn't it? And you started to then take expeditions across the world?
It did. So my typical season, with very small breaks, was doing Alaska in the summer, then heading over to Japan, and then heading down into the South Pacific. So we would do sailing from Guam all the way through Melanesia or Micronesia, then through Melanesia, and then into Polynesia, and then turn around and work all the way back again and be back in Alaska for the following summer. And then a few years later, the company decided to do a round the world cruise. So I set off from Singapore and headed west and got off the ship in Rome. And so again, got to see a lot of adventures along the way, and interesting experiences throughout that.
Amazing. As we're all emerging from lockdown at the moment, I think that's I'm quite jealous now.
Absolutely.
So a tough choice, and I always know travel people hate it when you ask this, but if as you have, and we can include other destinations that maybe weren't just exactly part of that, but which is your favourite part of the world to explore? And it doesn't have to be polar if you don't want it to.
And you know, it is genuinely a very, very challenging question. For me, I think I'd phrase it almost in a slightly different way, which is I particularly enjoy getting to really remote locations. And I think for me, the ideal expedition destination is one that you can only really access by ship. That maybe you can go to one part of it by land, but going from place to place. And so island archipelagos, I love the South Pacific island nations for that reason. Almost impossible to go to all of those places unless you're on an expedition ship. Similarly, polar regions, it's that access that the ship provides. So I'm going to skip the question slightly by saying a place that fits an expedition ship itinerary, for me, you just come away always going, that was an incredible experience and an incredible destination. Personally, I tend to prefer the cold to the heat. I've always said that in the heat, you just get to this point where there's nothing left to take off. And the cold, I lived in the interior of Alaska. Typical winter was -40. The coldest I saw was -62. You can always add more layers.
Blimey. I imagine when you're doing expedition cruises will be in summertime, won't it? For Alaska.
Very different.
That must always be positively hot compared to -40. Brilliant. And I don't know if we can allude too much to it, but just to loop round to your current role in Ponant, I think you've got some plans for Alaska, haven't you?
Certainly. And so Alaska is somewhere that we do love to visit with our ships. And I was actually, the last cruise I was on board, sadly, was back in 2019 running through the Bering Sea, which is, for me, one of my favorite parts of Alaska. As well as the Aleutian Islands. And yes, you're absolutely right. We're looking at when we can get back to Alaska, and we'd like to do that really as soon as possible. So watch this space, and we hope to have some more Alaska cruises in the upcoming years.
Great, excellent. Okay, well, let's. We did just start onto it, but let's look at the role of an expedition leader in a little bit more detail, because obviously that is a huge part of your career. Now, I guess let's just start off, because we know it's a very important role, but I guess not everybody may understand. I mean, what does an expedition leader do for a start, and why are they, why are they so pivotal in making the cruises happen?
So an expedition leader is responsible, I would say, really for the purpose of the voyage. I worked with a fantastic captain who said to me, at the end of the day, I'm just a bus driver. He said, you're the one who tells me where to go and what we need to do there. And so as an expedition leader, you work hand in hand with the captain. And I would always say to the captain, I'll ask, can we do something? And feel free to say no, that's absolutely fine. But it's always looking at the charts with the captain, looking at the weather, looking at what the goals of that particular voyage are, and seeing how we can absolutely best achieve them, and what's the most we can do. For me, I always look at it saying, can we add in something here, add in something there as well. Then on the other side of it, you've got the safety aspects of the operations. So there's Zodiac cruising, landing by Zodiac, and depending on what the weather's doing, these can be quite tricky things. So it's managing all of the logistics of that side, and fundamentally making sure everybody is safe and enjoying themselves on that as well. And then the other aspect that I think is really, really important part of being an expedition leader is, we're lucky enough to get to go back to these places and form relationships with communities and individual people, and also just landscapes and wildlife. We know what to expect. For most of the clients coming on board, they're not in that position. So it's the very first time. And it can be very easy to bring with you all of your home life, your job, and sort of have that on your shoulders, and actually not be present in the moment to have those experiences, or maybe to visit a remote community and think, well, this isn't how I would live. It's not how my home is. And so one of the roles of an expedition leader is to help people make that transition. And I was really enjoyed helping people prepare for maybe a cultural meeting, sort of meeting a indigenous community, whether it's up in Alaska or down in the South Pacific, where the way of life is so very different. It can be very hard to understand it when you experience it. So helping people kind of get ready for that, so when they're there, they can really get the most out of that experience and appreciate it to the maximum.
Brilliant. And so in terms of where the cruise visits on a typical cruise, is that your choice on the day, or do you plan these things, or a combination of the two?
It's really a combination of the two. So as I say, weather is always going to be an overriding factor on an expedition because you're launching the Zodiacs. Weather can play a huge part in that, and just making sure it's safe, not only to get ashore but also to come back again at the end of the day. And sometimes that's where the biggest challenge lies, is seeing how things will change. Some parts of the world, it's absolutely required that you plan ahead and book in, as it were, and that visits are managed. Other places, it's possible to completely just look out the window, see what the weather's doing, and have a chat with the captain and say, right, let's go and have some fun and explore. And the big thing about an expedition is flexibility is absolutely key. And for me, some of the most extraordinary experiences I've ever had have been on those expeditions where you've thrown the plan out the window and just sort of made it up as you go along, because then it's new for everybody. And often people come away and go, that was fantastic. Was that all planned? And you're like, nope. We're in it together. But that's what expedition is all about.
So have you got any stories of a particularly challenging time, or whether it was a particular visit or a cruise? Have you got any particular examples?
Well, I've got a couple. As the expedition leader, one of the funny things is somebody has to be first. And so that's the expedition leader who goes out there and checks to see whether the day will go ahead. And so sometimes that's really easy. Other times it's really difficult. And sometimes I've a couple of times been off the ship and gone, right, call back to the ship and say, I'm not going to be able to return. And I got stuck on an island in the sub-Antarctics, actually, Macquarie Island. Fantastic place to get stuck. But for 6 hours, I was stuck on shore with about 4 other people because the weather just kicked up, and we went, yeah, it's not going to be safe to get back on board the ship right now. But it was fantastic because if anyone's ever watched the Jetsons, and there's this flying saucer, well, there's a piece of design based on that, and called Googie huts, and they look like flying saucers, and the Australia Antarctic Division uses these Googie huts as their remote outposts. And so we had one of these iconic pieces of design sat there, fully equipped. So we all went in and had tea while we just waited for the weather to clear up. But as the expedition leader, you feel particularly challenged because, of course, all of your guests and the rest of your team often are back on the ship. Kind of, you're on the radio trying to explain, well, we're just waiting to see, can somebody do a lecture or explain this all to the guests, because usually that's your role. So for me, it's always the most challenging when you're not there to link with the guests, and but you have a good team and you trust them to do that link. But just to say, on the cruise side, I had a cruise in Alaska where we started the voyage, and the port at the end of the voyage, people was taking snowmobiles across a bay 40 miles wide. So the ice was still thick enough for them to do that. And that was in 11 days, the port that we were going to have to dock the ship.
Oh, blimey.
So as you can imagine, that was an interesting one. And sure enough, the ice opened up just in time, and we got in there. But that was a cruise where 60-70% of it was brand new to us. We just had to go where the ice would let us. And again, it was extraordinary.
And I suppose part of your role then is almost to make it, I suppose, to seem seamless to guests.
Yes.
Is that? I mean, because it'd be easy for guests to get worried about this sort of stuff, but they don't really need to, do they? That's part of the role for you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to make it seamless, I also think it's interesting when you're in a part of the world that is more logistically challenging. I always try and involve the guest with that as well. So perhaps talking about the weather at recaps in the evening, talking about the ice conditions in the polar regions, putting up ice maps and talking about how we're analyzing them, maybe having the captain or the ice pilot come along and do that as well. So that everyone's fully engaged, so we're not withholding anything. But absolutely, we'll be working on plan A, B, C, D. Often we run out of letters in the alphabet, so and that's just always making sure we have something interesting to do, and there always is. It's always great.
And I guess that's where experience comes in as well, isn't it? Because I think that's sometimes the difference between different operators, isn't it? Is that experience has got to count for a lot. If you're in Antarctica needing a plan E, you need to know what it is, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's for me as an expedition leader, you never know what's going to come at you. So there's no point in getting stressed or anxious about it. You just work the problem, as it were, when they come up, and find the very best solution. And yeah, experience counts for a lot in those situations.
And one question I've got, because I don't know, you've got a ship of 50, 100 or 100, 200 people on board. Not everybody likes the same thing. So how do you keep everyone happy? Because I guess that is your role at the end of the day, isn't it? How do you keep 200 people on a ship happy?
That can be a challenge. I'll tell you a quick story. One of the most extraordinary experiences I had on a ship was being on a ship, and we had a fantastic view of some brown bears. Right up on the shore, and we were just like, yeah, you've got to come out. And actually, it was a male brown bear and a female brown bear, and he was clearly pursuing her with amorous intent, and she wasn't so keen. And so we're like, this is not something we've ever seen, and they're right there. So everyone's out on deck, and we're walking around, and I look inside, and there is a guest reading a book. And I sort of walk in, and I'm like, sit down and say, can I just chat? Because I've never seen this, and in 70 trips, I've never seen this. Like, don't you want to come outside? He said, I hate wildlife. And I said, you're on a wildlife expedition. What are you doing here? And he said, my wife loves wildlife, and I'm here because I love my wife. and I said to him, absolutely, good for you. You're so you can't always please everybody all of the time, I guess, is the point. But it's trying to make sure you connect with everybody. And that's the nice thing on an expedition, because you have a lot of staff to guest ratio. So you develop personal connections, spending dinner, talking with each other, and all of this. And everybody's got an interest. And so it's really fun to sit down and have a chat and discover what that is, and then see what we can do to help people meet their own expectation, I guess, of the voyage.
Brilliant. And I was just going to come on to something, because we've been talking obviously about when things are challenging, but there are just days, and that sounds like one of them, where it just all falls into place, doesn't it? And it's just absolutely perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of days in Antarctica where the sun's out, you always have to take your layers ashore, but I've been in t-shirts and clear blue skies and just beautiful weather. You think this is perfection, and could never be planned for. Just how lucky are we?
Well, you should take the credit, don't you? I arranged all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I once had an extraordinary one-off experience where I had 20 humpback whales swim under my Zodiac.
Oh wow!
And you're just like, yeah, at that point, you're like, I can't even begin to take credit for that, particularly because it's actually illegal to position yourself in front of them. There's very strong rules to make sure you don't harass the wildlife. And but this was a group that dove to feed and then turned around, and the law is also that if you're within a certain distance, you're not allowed to get out of their way, because in case you accidentally hit one. And so that was one of those moments, and it was just everything fell into place, and it was slightly terrifying, but absolutely extraordinary to have all these magnificent animals right around you in a small boat.
So. Brilliant! Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Well, I guess that's a good point, actually. Just good to move on and talk a little bit about Antarctica, because I believe your first time there was not as an expedition leader, but was with the British Antarctic Survey, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, on the James Clark Ross.
Yeah,
fantastic ship. The British Antarctic Survey has these ships that are hybrid supply vessels and research vessels, so they can fulfill both roles. And the JCR, as she's known, was kind of more of a research vessel. So it was actually a friend of mine was doing her research, and very sadly, her research partner, you have to do medicals to go to Antarctica. And at the last minute, her research partner got diagnosed with serious illness and was unable to go. But of course, the logistics to set up these projects can run into the hundreds of thousands to millions of pounds. And so they needed someone with about 7-8 weeks notice who could drop everything, had the relevant training background to go. And so she gave me a call and said, is there any chance your company will let you go away for about 10 weeks? So I called my boss at the time, and she said, yep, we'll take you off the ship, and fly you over there, because it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And so we spent 8 weeks in Antarctic waters, touched land 3 times in 8 weeks.
Wow.
Because it was a research expedition, so we were conducting marine research off the ship, and I was actually helping operate a trawling system. So very unusually, I've been a trawler fisherman in Antarctica, and that's because we were looking at the fish that historically had been commercially harvested. So we were trying to study to see whether these populations had been wiped out or whether they were recovering at all. And so very unusual to have fished in Antarctica, because typically that sort of thing isn't allowed.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I was going to say that's all pretty regulated now, isn't it?
Yes, very much so.
Thank goodness. Brilliant. Oh, we'll come on to a little bit more about research, I think, a little bit later on as well. You've returned to Antarctica many, many times, and we've alluded to it, I think, with that story about the whales. But what is it? It's very difficult to put into words, but try. What is it about Antarctica that makes it so special?
It is so hard to put into words.
But I really need you to.
I know there's something about going to an entire continent that has no permanent population, that the scale of it is almost unimaginable. It's also a tough place. We're so used in our lives to being in places where I can do anything. I can walk outside and I am in charge. And in Antarctica, even with all the fantastic technology we have, we always have to respect the environment around us. And then, of course, you have all of this incredible wildlife that succeeds and thrives in that environment. And so I suppose in a way, it's a little bit like going to the moon, that you're in somewhere that's so alien, so magnificent. And everyone who's been comes back going, I just feel different. My perspective has changed in this world. And so I always encourage anybody who's considering going to Antarctica to absolutely go, because it is one of the few places that really deeply changes people. And is, just whether it's sunny or blizzards or whatever comes your way, it's always magnificent.
Brilliant. Thanks. Yeah, that was very, very well put, I think. And I'm talking of deeply changing. You met your wife in Antarctica.
I did. Yes.
Not known as a regular place to meet a future partner, but how on earth did that happen?
So my wife was working for the name has just gone out of my head. The UK Antarctic Heritage Trust, and so they run Port Lockroy. So people may have seen that as far as Penguin Post Office was filmed there, and it's an historic British base, founded in the Second World War, and then continued doing scientific work afterwards. And these days, it's maintained a little bit like a National Trust property. So they send down a team of 4 people every year. And she did 2 summer seasons down in Antarctica. And the second season, she was the base leader, and I was an expedition leader on an icebreaker, actually, on an old ship. And so I was bringing groups. She was coming to talk to our guests, and so we just got to know each other that way, and then just stayed in touch and met up after the season.
You must have only seen her about once every 10 to 14 days, haven't you, as you come back round?
About once every 10 days. Absolutely right. So it's a good, and we used to, and this wasn't my doing, but our ship had a tradition of always anchoring at Port Lockroy in the evening and having a deck barbecue. So we used to invite the team to come and join us on board every time we were there. And our particular ship was renowned as having the best cheese board in Antarctica. So they were very keen to come and join us. So it was a fantastic, very romantic setting, surrounded by mountains and beautiful sunsets and penguins swimming past.
Very good. And it's worth mentioning, isn't it? Because Port Lockroy is actually a British working post office, isn't it? You go there and post a postcard home.
It is. It's the southernmost British post office, and they process huge amounts of post, and by hand. At least when Nikki was there, it was done by hand. and gets sent back and then goes up to the Falkland Islands, I believe, before coming back up to the UK. So it can take a little while for the post to get back, but it's a great place to send postcards to friends from Antarctica.
Absolutely, and I think it's also got one of the world's most expensive gift shops I've ever seen. But where else are you going to shop in Antarctica?
Well, absolutely, and I have to say, all of the things are very nice.
They are
so
very
it's
nice.
one of those gift shops that you can spend a lot of money because you see lots of things you want to have.
Brilliant. So I think it's a Port Royal is obviously an incredible place. What other? If you give us maybe 2 or 3 other locations in Antarctica that someone's likely to see. I know nothing can ever be guaranteed, but 2 or 3 other places that people are perhaps likely to see and why they're so good as well.
So I think I'm going to cheat slightly again because I'm going to jump slightly out of Antarctica, and that's because one of my absolute favorite destinations is South Georgia. And so with Antarctic cruises coming from the peninsula side, you get a smaller percentage that go also to South Georgia, and South Georgia is breathtaking with its high mountains. A lot of people don't realize that penguins like the king penguins don't actually live in Antarctica. They live in the subantarctic region. And so there's just incredible beaches, these huge colonies of king penguins in South Georgia. And then also the very interesting whaling history, and of course the Shackleton history as well with South Georgia. So for me, that's just absolutely a fantastic destination. Once you get down onto the peninsula region itself, there's really many great destinations. Deception Island is really beautiful, and again, that's kind of at the northern end of the peninsula region, and you can sail right inside this volcanic caldera. It's an old British research base, and I assume whaling station. I have to think back in my history as well. And there's actually still some active research stations over on the far side that you don't actually see. The caldera is so big. But again, it's still an active volcanic region, so the ground is actually warm when you set foot on it. And again, great opportunity to go for walks, incredible penguin colonies around Deception Island as well. And then once you sail south, getting through to places, the Le Maire Channel is known as Kodak Alley. That's you sail by the ship through it, but just absolutely beautiful. A narrow channel, high mountains, lots of ice. Usually, sometimes the ice actually prevents you from going through there, depending on what ship you're on and its ice class. All of these fantastic destinations with sort of glaciers coming over the summits of the mountains. That's what's incredible, is you just see maybe the very top of a mountain peeking out and an ice sheet actually coming over those mountain ridges.
And one place I know you've been, I wanted to ask about, because it's probably not that well known, but we've noticed a bit of an increase in people wanting to go to the Ross Sea area of Antarctica, which is not on your usual South America route, but there is cruises that offer the Ross Sea. You've been, haven't you?
Yes, I have. So the Ross Sea is a very different experience. And again, there's the subantarctic islands. So we actually frequently cruise into the subantarctic islands, getting down to Macquarie Island, which has similar wildlife to South Georgia. There's incredible densities of penguins. But from Macquarie, when you continue on south, it's a longer crossing. So it's 4 days, if I recall correctly, down to Antarctica itself. But when you enter the Ross Sea, this is as far south as you can go with a ship. So with your typical Antarctic cruises, you've got the peninsula cruises, most of which are north of the Antarctic Circle. The Antarctic Circle is at 66 degrees. With the Ross Sea, you can get down below 70 degrees south. So you're well below the Antarctic Circle. The ice, therefore, is completely different and can be a lot more challenging with sea ice. And of course, down there, the iconic destinations are Scott and Shackleton's huts, which I've been lucky enough to set foot in. But when I went down, it was one of the most challenging years for ice that we ever had, and had to spend some time helping the bridge navigate through the ice.
and that's you've got a picture, I think, haven't you? Is this you've got a picture of that, haven't you?
Absolutely.
I think this picture, it doesn't show a lot, but I think it really highlights how difficult what you're talking about is.
Yeah, so I'll see if that pops up on your screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
And so that's me sat on the top of the mast on our ship. And I spent overall about 3 days sat on the top of the mast. And so my job here was to look for leads. So when you get into the thick ice and you've just basically got your sort of classic crack running through the ice. And so I would radio down to the bridge and say, you know, sail down this crack and then take the second lead on the left and then the third lead on the right, and you'll come into open water again. And so I'd sort of help guide the ship, because with ice, the higher up you get, of course, the greater the visibility. You can just see that little bit further ahead. So that was really key to try and help the ship safely navigate. And yeah, the hotel team were great. They sent me up flasks of hot chocolate to keep me warm up there. But I was wearing just about everything that I had, as you can see from this photo, and just getting cased in ice. I think we did 4 hours at a time, if I remember right.
Blimey. But that, and I think that, so when you get that far south, though, that's part of the experience, isn't it? I mean, it is just much more of a challenge. Everything's more challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to show, I added in just one more picture just to show you it doesn't always stay like that. So that's actually further south. And this is actually at Shackleton Sut. That's Shackleton Sut on the right-hand side of that picture on Mount Erebus.
Amazing.
And so absolutely, you sort of get through all of that. And it is part of the expedition completely. It's just... Again, it comes back to this idea that so often our experiences are so sanitized that, yes, I'm going to drive for the shops and I will get to the shops. You know, there's no doubt about that. But on this sort of expedition, you know, sometimes it's the challenge of getting there is a key part of the journey, and going with the best ship and the best team to make sure you have just the very highest chance of succeeding on that voyage.
Unbelievable. That is such a great picture. Thank you so much for sharing. That is something that very few of us, even us who work in polar, will probably likely to see, because that's something very special. I think it's a good point just to move on and talk about, needing the very best ship. And I know you're quite excited from Ponant's perspective, because you have a very nice new ship coming out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it, and actually why? You know, I mean, there are a lot of new ships out, but this is something truly unique, isn't it?
It is, and that's why, as an expedition leader, it's why I'm particularly excited. So, Le Commandant Charcot is our polar exploration vessel, and actually, nicely in this picture I've got on my background here, so you can see one of our sister ships just here, and these are ice class vessels. So these are actually very strong ships that can sail into the ice. And the Commandant Charcot, as you can see, is much larger, and she hasn't got significantly any more passengers on board. So all of that mass is about her capability and her design. So she is designed to penetrate into the ice. So she can go all the way up to the geographical North Pole. She'll also be able to operate in polar regions sort of earlier and later than traditional. So because of her ice strength, you know, even our sister ships transitioning places like the Northwest Passage, we've occasionally had years they've not been able to because the ice has been too thick. We've not had the certainty from the safety aspect that they'll be able to get through. The Charcot is one of those ships that's not actually a question. She is supremely strong. She's capable of handling just about anything the ice throws at her, and as I say, she'll be able to go, if need be, she can actually break ice as well, which is a very different requirement. When we operate her, we don't intend to break ice because for a variety of reasons, from sustainability and from our ethos of not changing the environment. But if we need to, she can certainly do that. So not only is she incredibly capable, but she's also right at the cutting edge of sustainability, which is something that's really at the core of Ponant. So she's going to be an LNG hybrid. Oh, she already is. She's actually already sailing right now. And so right at the cutting edge of sustainability, while being able to reach corners of the planet that no other ship can do. And I should just say, on the ice class, she's PC2. I believe I'm right in saying there's no other ship in the world, even amongst the research vessels, that it has the same ice class as the Charcot. So she really is phenomenally capable.
And this links on to your current role, isn't it? Because your current role is director of the Ponant's National Geographic Partnership. National Geographic, obviously a very iconic name in exploration. So tell us just a little bit more about that association and what you do.
So particularly of interest to us and to National Geographic. So we were actually approached by National Geographic. They wanted a partner who aligned with their views on sustainability. So they actually assessed a number of companies and recognized us as the leader in sustainability, which was fantastic for us. They also wanted a company with strong roots in exploration. And so that's something obviously that we're doing, will continue to do with the Charcot. And for us, we're really excited to partner with National Geographic. And of course, as you say, they've got 130 years of history of funding science and exploration. And they've awarded over 14,000 research grants to conduct science. And they still do that today. A lot of people only know them as a magazine, but they're actually one of the world's largest funders, private funders of research and exploration in the world. So really, really exciting partnership for us. And again, watch this space. You'll see more and more of our cruises in partnership together. And it's not just a branding exercise. It's also bringing that National Geographic experience on board the vessel.
What's that? What's a National Geographic? Because you do have non-National Geographic and National Geographic ones. What do you get? What happens on a National Geographic cruise? It sounds very exciting.
Yeah, so there's a couple of key aspects. So we're really fortunate to have access to some of the people who work at National Geographic. So on the magazine side, National Geographic's really well known for its photography and its storytelling. So on all of our National Geographic departures, we have National Geographic photographers on board. And they're there not to take their own photographs, but they're actually there to teach all of the guests on board how to capture their own personal stories through photography. So they'll be doing lectures, they'll be doing workshops, they'll be doing one-on-one, taking people on photo walks. But it's an opportunity for people to get instruction on photography from the best photographers in the world, which is an incredible opportunity. On top of that as well, we have what's called a National Geographic expert. And these are people, they may be scientists, some of them are actually journalists, but they're leaders in their field. And they bring all of that sort of history and perspective of National Geographic to the voyage. And they look at the sort of wider global perspectives of their subject matter. And so can lead fascinating discussions and experiences and really, really help bring that expedition to life in a new way and bring all of that National Geographic perspective to the voyage as well. Plus, on top of that, we have things like all the fantastic National Geographic documentaries and things like that as well, of course, to enjoy on board.
Amazing. Oh, that sounds great. And that obviously, and that led you, didn't it, to lead one of the first National Geographic cruises in 2019 before lockdown to Alaska.
Yeah, absolutely. From Nome to Vancouver. So one of my favorite parts of the world. And so, yeah, absolutely. So we had a fantastic voyage exploring the Bering Sea and then cruising on down into Southeast Alaska. Just really extraordinary expedition.
Almost full circle.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Brilliant. Well, I'm just conscious of time, but before we wrap up, I can't let you go. Obviously, some of our viewers might be already booked on cruises or considering their own cruises. Have you got a couple of top tips for someone when they actually get to go on their expedition cruise? Something that they wouldn't think of, that only an expedition leader would know. Tough.
So one of the things I often see is people bringing cameras actually. Is that often people buy a new camera to bring on an expedition. And make sure you've learnt your camera before you leave home. So spend some time just walking around your neighborhood, taking amazing photographs so that when you see that fantastic wildlife opportunity and want to take the photo, you already know what to do with it. So that's definitely a top tip. And the other one is while you're on expedition, put your camera down. Because it's so easy to get caught up in taking the photo that you actually miss the experience. And we've always got sort of staff photographers capturing moments as well. So definitely do recommend just taking some time out to experience the moment, for sure.
Love it, brilliant. Oh well, listen, I think that's a great point to finish. So, Alastair, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you so much for all your insight as well. It's been absolutely fascinating. If you have got any questions for Alastair, please pop them into the Q&A box. I'm going to and shortly we'll come back for a question and answer session with Alastair. So if you pop them in the Q&A, we'll come back shortly, and I'll go through as many as I can, just obviously slightly conscious that we've slightly overran, but hopefully everyone's all right, good for another 10 minutes or so. So thank you, Alastair. I'm now going to hand over to Vladislav, who is Ponant's sales manager, and actually someone I've worked with for a number of years in expedition cruising now. His CV is very comprehensive in expedition cruising. Hi, Vlad. Thanks for I'm glad you joined us.
Hi, Martin. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. Absolutely delighted to join you and everyone else here tonight.
Great. So I'm going to hand over to you just to give a short presentation on Ponant, a little bit more about what you can expect from a cruise and on board. And then afterwards, we'll come back for the Q&A. So pop your questions in the Q&A box below. And then we will have the prize draw at the end. So Vlad, over to you.
Superb. Thank you very much indeed, Martin. I hope you can all see my screen right now. So yeah, what an absolutely fascinating stories we have enjoyed this evening. Thank you, Alastair and Martin. Very good evening, one and all. Once again, thank you ever so much for joining us for this special evening tonight. And I am very much delighted to unveil Ponant to you, as I'm sure you are eager to learn a little more following such inspirational talk. Now, with over 30 years of experience, Ponant is a true leader in luxury expeditions and are very much proud to offer you a state-of-the-art modern fleet, in fact, most modern fleet in the industry. And all of our small and eco-design ships also carry clean ship certification. Now, we've not just have 30 plus years of experience operating yachts and running expeditions, but designing our yachts, researching and scouting for new unique expeditions and unique destinations. And importantly, our officers, captains, have been growing with the company for these 30-some years. Our international partnership with National Geographic is a partnership forged around common values. As mentioned a moment ago by Alastair Newton, exploration and sustainability are the main focuses and the main values of our two amazing brands. And these expeditions are all about the enriching, authentic, educational, and unique experiences available to you, taking you on those voyages of discovery of some of the most remote places on the planet, and in a meaningful way. And as we say so, because we return a portion of our proceeds to the National Geographic Society, which supports all kinds of projects, as once again illustrated by Alastair, around the world to understand and protect our planet. Now, you will enjoy, just to reiterate, a truly unique enhancement to your overall experience, as you shall have the privilege of traveling side by side with two special guests aboard with us, a National Geographic expert and a National Geographic photographer. The experts come from a variety of backgrounds, once again, writers, archaeologists, anthropologists, field researchers, photographers, and filmmakers, of course. They will engage with you both in formal settings like lectures and seminars, and informally, such as during meal times and throughout excursions ashore. They are specialized to offer global perspective, linking to the human journey and the changing planet and wildlife, and how it is all interrelated, what we can do and what we are currently doing to take a better care of our planet. Now, you'll be able to engage in enriching discussions with like-minded guests and embark on an authentic personal journey to deepen your understanding of the world and our role in it. We are delighted to present to you the most modern fleet, and indeed the most sustainable fleet in the industry. This evening, we will mostly look at Charcot, as well as sister ships. Generally, All our polar itineraries are featured aboard these ships. Let us begin by taking a closer look at how your unforgettable polar expedition will be enhanced by the all-inclusive luxury of Le Commandant Charcot. Now, first and foremost, our cutting-edge technology is taking expedition cruising to a whole new level. All our ships carry clean ship certification. Ponant's entire fleet exceeds current applicable environmental regulations, which indeed is something that is expected from a company founded by mariners, captains, and officers. Charcot is the world's first expedition ship with PC Ice Class 2, PC2 Ice Class Standard, and the first expedition cruise ship to use dual fuel liquefied natural gas, or LNG. She will also use batteries when stopped with the main engines turned off, offering absolute silence with no vibrations and unconditional requirement, we think, in the pristine polar regions. At 30,000 some tonnage, she can navigate through ice thickness of up to 8.5 feet. Most other expedition ships, in fact, can navigate through up to 3.5, 4.5 ice thickness, which in essence means that you will have even more opportunities to get to real hidden gems. Also, she offers you 30% more public space than other ships of similar category, an important added benefit indeed. Let's have a glance at what to expect aboard. So, especially for polar expeditions, rather than a mudroom, you will have the added comfort thanks to the 2 expedition rooms on deck 3. So where staff will actually take your boots and gear and disinfect your boots and put them in our boot drive system, where they will be stored under your cabin number and ready for your next outing. We can see a lovely view of the reception area from the lifts. You'll see the multimedia art, which will be accompanied with music. Like all our ships, we have designed Charcot to establish a connection with the surrounding landscapes. Names of public spaces are taken from natural elements in the Inuit language to honor their culture. For example, boutique shop is called Ilu, which means the igloo. Main lounge, 3,400 square feet. It does have a variety of small bays tucked away for privacy. There is also a stage area for dancing and piano for live music played in the evenings. Off to the side is a cigar lounge with cognacs and additional liquors available for you. The theater with cutting-edge audio and lighting technology. Ponant is actually renowned for exceptional cuisine, and being French cuisine or French cruise line, we would stand for nothing less. From the top left, when entering our main dining room, you will see the chef and team preparing your food. Meals are plated with multiple menu options to suit a range of meal preferences and restrictions. Each meal will have both French and international cuisine and include fine wines from the cellar. A more casual grill restaurant has floor-to-ceiling windows, which really opens up the outside. Grill restaurant is usually a buffet style, featuring live cooking concept with an open floor plan and cooking demonstrations during your voyage. The Blue Lagoon is our outdoor pool area, heated water and benches surrounding it, 2 separate pools there. In the center, you will enjoy the warmth generated by lava stones with lamps heated by hot water, and all the energy used is in fact recycled from the ship. One more point to note is that on decks 5 to 9, floors are heated to prevent slipping. And by the way, deck 5 is a promenade deck where we have heated walking track with 4 heated benches using recycled energy from the ship once again, and you can walk continuous laps around the ship uninterrupted. For your information, 5 laps around will equate to over a mile. Favorite place for Ponant guests tends to be the observation lounge. Anori, the observation lounge, is another example of a place aboard to relax after a full day of excursions, if you like, appreciate in the views as well as live evening entertainment. And its U-shape affords privacy and incredible views. Again, you'll see the panoramic windows, but also a glass ceiling to view the stars and northern lights at night. As you know, expeditions are all about destinations, right? And at Ponant, we take our time to design our ships to ensure you get an absolute maximum from a destination as well as during your time aboard, with a cup of hot chocolate in hand or a glass of fine champagne. Deck 9 has nearly 5,000 square feet of space dedicated to wellness center, including Serenity Lounge with sea view to relax before or after a session, hair salon, and even a nail salon available for you. I'm sure you will very much enjoy this heated indoor salt pool with counter current system, and you can also see the skylight which bathes the pool in natural light. We will have a gym coach to facilitate for group and private Pilates, as well as morning yoga and meditation classes should you wish. On board, there are 135 suites and staterooms providing warm, understated settings. Each has a private balcony or terrace. One of our primary aims is to make sure that you have the feeling and sense of sailing on a private yacht. At the aft of decks 6 and 7 are 4 stunning duplex suites equipped with private terraces, and above those sits the breathtaking 410 square feet owner's suite, which opens up to private terrace with its own jacuzzi, which you can see a little bit better on this image here. Certainly, you will have plenty of choice to enjoy from a variety of activities available to you, and Polar Routes specialists are more than happy to assist you with any additional questions regarding these. With Ponant, you will enjoy your expedition aboard a floating boutique hotel with the included excursions, specialist guests aboard with us, and equally as important, aboard a technologically advanced clean ship certified yacht. And coming to the last few slides, we of course have a variety of unique itineraries available for you. When we say that Ponant offers you expeditions off the beaten path, we really mean exactly that. And this geographic North Pole itinerary is certainly an excellent example. So from north to south, down to Antarctica to enjoy a truly unique moment in style, total eclipse in the Weddell Sea, and once again, the added benefit of exploring polar regions aboard ice-class PC2 vessel, which means you will have more opportunities to see some of the hidden gems other vessels simply cannot get to. Just for your quick reference, a handful more explorations for you to consider, including the Ross Sea there on the bottom left here for you, as we just talked about it a moment ago with Alastair. We only have a few seconds or so left. So last but not least, Ponant sister ships, beautiful open spaces, unique atmosphere, subtle blend of luxury, intimacy, and well-being, plenty of treatments for you to choose from. And staterooms and suites also reflect the understated sophistication, combining chic and natural refinement. And as indeed expected, your expedition experience is further enhanced thanks to a variety of partner brands aboard with us. Well, we hope that you choose to come aboard with us soon and enjoy the best of both worlds experience, high-end luxury coupled with true expedition experience. It is all about the destination, just as it is all about your comfort and moments of indulgence. National Geographic and international partnership is often seen to emphasize our efforts and achievements. So if you like a true quality stamp of approval within the expedition cruise world especially. Now we are delighted to share a special offer and with you, as well as onboard credit exclusive, thanks to our partnership with Polar Routes, from 30% offer on select itineraries, plus a £200 per person onboard credit. Well, I hope that this wraps it up nicely. Thank you very much indeed for your attention, or otherwise, merci beaucoup. And I shall hand the mic back over to Martin.
Thank you, Vlad. Thanks very much. Perfectly on time as well. It's just like, just looking at it is just a dream, isn't it? I can't wait to get back out onto the ice. It looks absolutely fantastic. And Alastair's back with us as well. Thanks, Alastair. Just a few minutes, because just conscious of time. We have had quite a few questions come in. I'm afraid we're not going to get onto all of them. So thank you so much for submitting them. But I'm going to get through as many as I can just now. I think there's one question which I think is worth asking, because I think it's probably on a few people's minds. So I guess I come to you from a Ponant perspective. But obviously, the next Antarctic season should be starting November 2021 through to March 2022. How likely is it? Are Ponant still fully planned to go? And what are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. Great question. Listen, from our perspective, we are as ready as ever. We have our finger on the pulse and we're ready to go. We have over 10 itineraries currently available live on our website, on our Polar Routes website. Yeah, we are absolutely ready for it. We do have also flexible booking terms and conditions together with Polar Routes, which offers maximum flexibility and reassurance for your guests. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that, guys.
Right. I think from Polar Routes' perspective, we're still 5 months away from November, 7-8 months away from January. I think it is a bit of a wait and see game at the moment in terms of, I think it's not the ability to run the cruise, it's probably the accessibility of Argentina and Chile. The rates there finally have started to go in the right direction, not perhaps as quickly as we'd all like, but hopefully over the next few months we'll see those rates come down, and we'll see what happens from that perspective. But glad to hear Ponant are ready to go. I think that's the case for most expedition cruise lines, are still committed to the season at this stage. So we'll wait and see. And as Vlad said, a lot of the cruise lines, and obviously Ponant included, have got very flexible terms at the moment. So if you fancy it, you've got nothing to lose by booking it. The worst that's going to happen is you'll be able to get your money back or change your cruise, or perhaps push it on to a following year if you need to. But hey, it's exploration, isn't it? It's always the way. It's the very nature of it is generally people who want to get away as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
Question for you, I think, Alastair. A couple of questions actually regarding wildlife. Someone very specifically departing on the 28th of December, but someone also asking about what kind of wildlife. So what kind of wildlife do you tend to see late December, early January? It's a good time for the penguin chicks, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way the sort of wildlife and the scenery progresses through the season is when you start off early in the season, the earlier you go, the most pristine it is. With pristine snow. As you move through the months, you get into, obviously, as you say, the penguin chicks. So sort of late December, January is when those newborn penguin chicks, you get the sort of huddling under their parents. So great for photography, absolutely. Then as you continue on, the penguin chicks grow, you get the creches, and also you get more and more whales coming as the sort of season progresses. So it's always challenging to say which month is best, because every month has something else on offer.
What's your, because Federica also asked when's the best time to go. So it is, there's never a bad time to go, is there? But what's your personal favourite time to be down there?
Yeah, I think absolutely the peak season is probably right on the money, right in January, just because that's, as you say, you've got those new penguin chicks. It's a great time to go, and you're just starting to get some more of the whales come in as well. So it's a good mixture of all the different aspects.
Brilliant. And Simon Turner asks, what will the weather be like in Antarctica? I'm guessing during the summer months. I mean, it's a changeable scene, but what can you expect?
So in the summer months, it's very changeable. So layers are absolutely key. and wanting to make, the sun can come out, it could be baking hot because you're on snow and it all reflects. 5 minutes later, you can be in a blizzard. So always right around freezing, maybe a little bit below, but layers is absolute key to having fun. And the one tip I'd say is when you're going out and about in a Zodiac cruise, dress more warmly than you think you should. And when you're going ashore as well, dress warmly, maybe take an extra layer, even if it's warm, put it in your bag, lots of gloves, keep your hands warm, because if you're warm, you're going to enjoy yourself. If you're cold, you have to go back on board early and you miss out.
Brilliant. Good advice. Good advice. And one for you, Vlad. Gillian Tip Lady says, do your wonderful Ponant ships have single cabins? It's difficult to find ships which cater for the solo traveller who does not want to share a cabin without charging them a very high single supplement. What's Ponant's policy on single supplements?
Thank you very much for this excellent question. Ponant is one of the most friendliest cruise lines, expedition cruise lines when it comes to solo cruisers, solo travelers. We in fact have multiple no single supplement itineraries across polar regions. Currently we have, I think, over 15 or 25 no single supplement itineraries available, including some on National Geographic. So we can cater for solo travelers too.
So a whole cabin to yourself.
An entire cabin, no single supplement.
It doesn't get much better than that, does it really? Brilliant, great. I think that will wrap that up. I would just like to acknowledge Simon Turner's question, which is asking about how climate change has impacted on the Antarctic Peninsula. And I'd really like to get into it, but just conscious of time, I think that will open a rather large can of worms. So Simon, I'd just like to acknowledge the question because I think you've given me a good idea for hopefully a future inspiration series where perhaps we can actually look at that in a bit more detail. So I'd just like to acknowledge that question, but I just think with time, we haven't got enough time to go through it just today. But thank you very much for that question. That's given me a bit of a thought. I'd just like to, we'll finish off now. We'll have a look at the prize winner in just a moment. But before we do, I'd just like to say thank you so much, Alastair. Thank you so much, Vlad. And thank you to Ponant for hosting us this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Martin, and everyone else.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, I'm going to just share my screen to do the prize draw, and hopefully everybody can now see this. So, as just to remind you, you have the choice of a sterling silver penguin necklace, courtesy of Promise Designs, or a bottle of Shackleton's whiskey. The winner is Jenny Gwynn. So Jenny Gwynn, congratulations. One of those items is yours. To claim it, please can you email me on the address on screen. Just drop me a quick email, I'll reply, and then we'll get your details to get one of those prizes sent off to you. But congratulations, Jenny, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Just to remind you of Ponant's special offer through Polar Routes. The sale is very much now on. Savings of up to 30% on Ponant expeditions when they're booked through Polar Routes. Plus, we have an additional onboard credit offer that on selected departures by booking a cabin, you'll receive £200 per person onboard credit. And I think Vlad will probably nod his head. The best thing about that is Ponant's already all-inclusive. So, I mean, that £200 is real indulgence territory. I'm guessing that's, Vlad, that can be spa treatments, that could be the hairdressers you mentioned, obviously not for myself. I mean, that is something you can use for a real treat, isn't it?
Absolutely, Martin. Yes, indeed. If not hair salon, then perhaps nail salon. But yes, treatments. We do also have a variety of premium drinks, age-old whiskies, etc. available. But yes, absolutely, it's an all-inclusive experience for our guests, and 24-hour room service too.
Brilliant, excellent, lovely. Thank you so much for that. Our details at the bottom there. Please do visit our website, polarroutes.co.uk. Our email address, just email inquiry@polarroutes.co.uk. One of the team will be quick to get back to you. And our telephone number, we're open tomorrow from 9 a.m. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We are doing this again. We've got plans for the next one, but it will be announced shortly. So do stay tuned. And again, my thanks to Ponant, Vlad, and Alastair as well. Thank you very much. Take care. Good night.